There we go.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Um,
guys.
I don't know who's watching, but thanks for being here.
Yeah, two people watching. That means you and me.
I'm not watching. It's
So
the Steve and Maria show.
it's the Steve and Marie.
Ba-da-da-da-da.
Da, 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 da. We
I
could
was
really.
watching Jimmy Fallon the other night.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe I
Which
should
one?
save this for the show. Well,
Okay.
I don't even remember what it was. But I was, he walks out from that big shiny curtain like Johnny Carson used to do.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, I wish I could watch a Johnny Carson episode, just an old one, just from beginning to end. I wish I could just watch one. And,
He said or
Doc
you said?
Severinsen. I would.
You can see them on YouTube.
I know, but I just had this craving for it, and I don't know why. It was just, but I will. I'll probably go watch one. But it's like, wouldn't it be cool just to have a new, if they were still alive and just do a new one and see what they say about current events,
The current
current life.
events. Did you see
Yeah.
him? Did you see him the other night when oh my gosh, it was so terrible. Jay Leno was on it.
Oh no, I didn't
He
know that.
he Jimmy Fallon brought on Jay Leno. So Jay Leno came out and did his stand-up shtick, which was terrible.
Hmm.
I just don't think he's funny.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, I thought he was funny once, but I guess our take. This is probably a good thing for the show.
Okay.
To talk about this. Let's save it for the show because I think I have a really nice opinion on that. And by nice, I mean I actually have an opinion.
All right. So has our countdown begun? Are we getting ready to start?
I think that we can wait a couple of minutes for
Father
Father Corey
Corey?
to get here. He
Father
just he
Corey.
just emailed me and said he'd be here. I guess Father's
Yay.
show was running over.
Well,
Um,
when I was before I popped in over here, I thought, I don't know.
that he was or he wasn't.
It sounded like he was wrapping it up because he was giving a plug for Catholic Weekend, and
Oh, he might have been doing that.
yeah, it
'Cause-
just I assumed that he was because I knew that's right when I got the link uh, to the Hangout, so I thought, oh, okay, I better jump over there. I try
Mhm.
not to have more than one thing running at a time because this my Mac tends to reboot itself in the middle of the show. So
Oh, I've been having. Did you think? I regret every moment of it.
what's that?
I I installed Yosemite
Oh yeah.
and I have the new operating system and I have
Uh-huh.
regretted every moment of it.
Really? Huh.
I updated my phone and I updated my iPad and I did those first.
Mm-hmm.
Actually I did my iPad first because it was the least important of the three.
All right.
And it was beautiful. So I said, okay, let me just do it on the phone and see what happens. So I did that, and then I did my laptop, and it is slow and hangs up on everything.
Hmm.
And so I started to migrate a lot of the stuff that I have on here, and it's not that much because I have an external drive where I keep a lot of my pictures and things like that. So it's, it's just I don't know. I think it's a RAM hog.
Hmm. I don't know. Do you run any of those cleanup routines?
I've got a couple.
I
Um,
use one called Cocktail. I've used it for years and years and years, and I think
Cocktails.
it's an app you can download from the App Store, and it's for Mac OS, and it goes through it. It does cleanup of stuff, and it fixes things, and it runs cleanup routines, and I don't know. I use it like once a week on all my Macs, and I've never had any serious trouble. I don't know if that would solve your problem, but
I hope so because I was running a memory cleanup that I just uninstalled because I felt like it was using up memory just to do the just to
yeah.
do the 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 automated cleanup. It was kind of a pain, but yeah, everything's just hanging up on it, and it's so funny because I was on Twitter and I've got a very dear friend that's visiting for the weekend, and she's an architect and just a beautiful eye for photography.
Mm-hmm.
So we went off on an adventure yesterday to just take pictures. So we went into town, and then we went into Atlanta, and went to see our old homes and things like that. So we drove around town, and she was taking pictures so that she could create a blog
Hmm.
for. She travels a lot, and so she just wanted to do that. So I was helping her set up the blog last night. It was so funny, and we'd get hung up every couple of minutes,
Hmm.
trying to do this on my laptop, and she didn't want to use her laptop because she brought an old one,
Mm-hmm.
because she's going to help us do some uh, revision in the house, some construction. That John qualified for a VA um, program where they go in and they make your home handicap accessible,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the other things that they have to do for him. So that means tearing down the sunroom that we have, building him uh, an ADA suite.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's here to help us, with the design elements and stuff like that.
Oh,
Hey,
okay.
Father, how
Good
are you?
morning. Good morning. Good.
Morning.
Just got done with Father Roderick, so jump over here right away.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, it
Yeah.
looks like.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the time you put in for these things.
Oh, I enjoy it. It's a lot of
Thank
fun. This
you.
is fun stuff.
Well, we're going to fly by the seat of our pants today. Sarah is on her way to Dubai later today, and I don't know where Jeff is. Maybe he's
He
in
must
the air.
have to work or something.
Yeah, he might be in the air. So here we are, and we can get started.
Okay,
Um,
we got some good things in the show notes we can refer to if we
do we? I haven't
get
even
stuck.
I haven't even looked at the show notes. So if you want to lead that stuff, I'll get started right now. I'm going to start the timer for the first break, which is going to be in about 14 minutes, and Jeff's going to do all the pre-production stuff to put in send and things. So we just really have to get through the timing on it.
Okay,
Okay, you guys ready to go?
certainly.
All right. Well, let's get started. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Catholic Weekend. It's not Captain Jeff. Do you recognize me without my music? It's Maria Johnson, and I'm here with my good pals, Steve Nelson.
Hey, hello everybody. Hey, Maria, you can be my captain today.
Oh, Captain, my Captain. You're just making me blush at the excitement of
My
it
job
all.
is done.
Yeah, your job is done. It's going to be a train wreck. And our other good pal, Father Corey Stika. Hello.
How's it going?
Well, I guess I'm going to lead the train wreck today. It's already crashed a little bit, hasn't it?
Oh no. We haven't had any technical hiccups or anything, so
Not yet.
we do have
Not
all
yet.
the right little flashing lights and everything going on, don't we?
Listen, I got my flashing lights going right here. I put a timer on my phone, and I'm watching it, so you guys can watch out for about 14 minutes too. So it's great to be here together. You can see that Jeff is probably somewhere in the air. So watch out for falling debris and blue ice, right? And Sarah, we understand, is on the way to a grand adventure that I'm sure she'll come back and tell us about when she returns.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, what's going on with you guys?
Well, I'm just trying to stay out of the cold. We're in the middle of our first real bitter cold snap. It's about 0 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, with down to 20 below wind chill.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
goodness.
I can't even believe that. I'm putting on my hat just to think about it. My Angry Birds hat just went on.
There you go.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's really cold for us too, but I can't complain with what you've got. It's
Yeah.
only 33 here, which is balmy.
That sounds pretty good right about now.
Holy smokes! Well, that's what we have going on here, but it's not that cold. If the wind keeps out of the way, I think that we can survive it. But I have a friend that's visiting from Miami, and I had to find an extra blanket for her, and she's out doing some things in the yard with John this morning while we're here, and she came in and she says, "Do you have a hat? Do you have a scarf?" He's already in my boots
Yeah.
and my hat and my scarf. I said, "Do you need an Arctic, jacket or something?" She goes, "No, I'm fine."
Isn't it funny what you get acclimated to?
Oh,
Hmm.
I know,
Well,
right?
that's why I laugh. You hear people from someplace like Montana or Alaska or someplace like that where it does get quite cold during the winter, and then they go down to Georgia or Florida or Arizona, and everybody's all bundled up and it's 65 degrees. And everybody
Right?
from Montana is sitting there going, they're in shorts and t-shirt going, this is great.
Yeah.
I
Especially-
remember we had a Christmas one time when we were still in Miami, and we had a swimming pool in our backyard, and we roasted a pig. We had the big traditional Noche Buena pig roast with the black beans and rice and all the things, right?
Yum, yum.
But it was Christmas Eve, and we heard that there was a cold snap coming. It was 72 degrees, and we were all wearing our sweaters, and my grandmother showed up in her fox stole, and
Uh, and then we've probably all known the college student who wears shorts and flip flops all through the winter.
my son. My son. There's a picture of him wearing a hat and a parka and shorts and flip-flops. And you can see the snowflakes in the picture.
Oof. I've known people like that too, and usually we just kind of shake our head and you're nuts. But
Yeah. There's a limit, There's a limit.
of course, how often they wear the shorts depends on how much they drink the beverages, shall we say.
I see. That may be the case. Although, you know what? Let's do an experiment on the air right now. And Steve is familiar with this. I'm in my son's room, and he moved out last year into a big boy apartment. And so I've taken over the studio. But when I was cleaning up to paint it and do everything, I think Steve was with me on the phone when I was digging things out from underneath the bed. Let me just take a break and see what I can find. You talk among yourselves. Talk among yourselves.
It's dangerous to go spelunking under under the bed.
Oh boy, she must be finding some good stuff.
I have found something. I
Oh,
have
no.
found a treasure.
Oh, no. Is it an open or an unopened bottle of
It's
beer?
unopened.
For those not watching the
gonna be-
video, she found a
gonna be-
bottle of Pabst Blue Ribbon.
There are two underneath there.
Oh.
So I found some booty for me. It's my house, my beer.
There you go.
Oh.
Somebody's storing up for the winter, like a little squirrel or something.
It's their survival stash. Yeah.
Actually, it's probably more of an indictment on the last time I cleaned in here, right? That's funny.
How do we know it's your son's stash?
Because I don't drink Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Oh, okay.
My tastes run a little bit more expensive than that. You know what? I went to the Brick Store pub yesterday with my girlfriend. We were in Decatur, and I had an Eshatan.
I don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh! A quad. I don't know what that means either. It was a delicious beer. It was
Ooh, that
really,
would be-
really dark.
It's what I'm thinking it is. That would be really strong too, alcohol-wise.
Oh, it was violent. It came in a it came in a little. They poured
Yeah.
it in a little tight glass.
It's probably a Belgian style beer. Of course, Sarah would
Oh
be
my
able to tell you
God.
much more about this than I could because I'm kind of an amateur Catholic drinky. She's the professional Catholic drinky. But Belgian style because they've got different. The Belgian beers were the Trappist beers. They're the ones by the monks. And the higher, you got the double and the triple, and I guess the quad would be the next level. And that meant fermented longer, stronger alcohol content. That would be the one maybe like the abbot would drink.
Oh yeah,
In the
well, I
monastery.
was the Pope yesterday
Really?
because I'd never had anything like that. It was good though.
Sounds good. Those Belgian beers are really good. Some of the
We always
best.
seem to talk about beer on this show.
I know. Well, I guess that's where our interest runs. What would you? Oh, let's talk about what we were talking about earlier about the comedy. Steve and I were talking before you came on about watching Jimmy Fallon the other night, right? You
The
tell
Tonight
your story.
Show. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even remember what was on the show, but I just remember watching Jimmy Fallon, and he walks out from behind the big shiny curtain like Johnny Carson used to do, and I just kind of had this, I don't know, craving, I guess. It was like, wouldn't it be, wouldn't it be nice if we could have Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon back and just to talk about current events? What would their take be on the current situation of things? And I missed the big band, the Doc Severinsen big band.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, it was just it just crossed my mind. I mean, maybe I'm showing my age, I was like, oh, I wish it was back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But
Back in
I used to
those
really,
days.
I like that grand entrance, of the Doc Severinsen band, and that whole thing. And I don't know, I like Jimmy Fallon's show a lot, but it's not as classy as Johnny Carson was.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the thing. Johnny Carson was more of the old style interviewer. You watch that, or you watch some of the like Ed Sullivan and some of those classics, which admittedly some of that predates me, I'll admit. Though I remember watching Carson as a kid and really enjoyed it. Didn't get all the jokes because I wasn't supposed to at that age, but still enjoyed it. It was definitely it was a classier style. They weren't quite going for the shock. They weren't quite going for the flash. He was, and Johnny Carson himself was, by all accounts, a very humble and private man. He didn't want his life to be out there. Yeah, he was on TV, but once he left that studio, it was his life.
mm-hmm.
You don't see that a lot with the modern.
He was a Midwesterner, wasn't he? Wasn't he from Nebraska?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you said that, because what I always liked about the Carson show, and I used to watch it when I was in college too, I think a little bit. But I was mostly, I think, a kid in high school, staying up late when I wasn't supposed to. But I always liked how he would have these random guests that just happened to be in the same studio because they were working on something next door, and they would just pop in.
Mm-hmm.
It was like all of these people were pals, they were friends, or at least friendly acquaintances that they would, pop in on each other, and I think that those were some of the best shows.
Yeah, because they seemed less scripted.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I really like Jimmy Fallon's show too.
I think he's
got some
brilliant.
hilarious bits that he does. Like
Oh yeah. Some of the stuff that gets
or
put
whatever.
on, some of the stuff that gets put on YouTube is just absolutely outrageously funny. I mean, it's just incredible. Some of it gets kind of stupid. I sometimes I find his humor to be off-putting because it's just kind of dumb humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff that he puts out there is just absolutely fantastic.
Well,
You see the
speaking of
one-
dumb, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just saw one, I think it was this week, that was, I thought, awful. What's his name? Jay Leno came back. And
Awkward.
it was. I was watching it, and it was like, we joke about the train wreck here, but I thought it was a train wreck. It was like one of those things where remember in Seinfeld, Kramer, I can't turn away. What was it, the thing about the painting? Anyway, I couldn't turn it off. So I'm watching Jay Leno, and he walks out like it's his house. He walks out. It was his old set in a different city, I think, but he walks out, and he starts to deliver his very dated comedy routine, his stand-up routine. I don't know. I think the kind of comedy that I appreciate is finding the funny in what's happening, as opposed to having these scripted jokes that you just get up and you tell. Even though I'm sure that everything that Fallon does is very scripted as well, but it's just a different delivery. And I thought it was awful. I finally did turn it off. I've had enough of this guy. He's not funny.
Yeah.
He's not funny. Awkward, not funny anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I know Jay Leno made his career doing stand-up. That's where he really started, and it was just because he did so well at it that he was given the opportunity to become the Johnny Carson's successor.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he did well, but admittedly, I wasn't as big a fan of Jay Leno as I was of Johnny Carson by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't watch a lot of those shows anymore anyways because, unfortunately, the humor just isn't quite my style anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I
I
didn't
just
know
go to bed
what was
earlier
going on.
too.
No, I'm usually up during them. I just don't watch them.
Oh no, I find myself nodding off at about 10:30.
Yeah.
and I feel like, no, I'm not going to be that old lady yet that has to go to bed at 9:30.
Yeah.
The
Well, I
eyes.
do what I always did with either the Tonight Show or Letterman was like I just wait to see who's on, and then I make a determination if I really want to stay up or not. And if it doesn't catch my attention immediately,
No way. Sleep is way more important to me these days.
I continually just to say things that make me feel older and older.
Do you ever see that report that comes out from one of the colleges that says freshmen this year don't
Oh,
Yeah.
remember? No, that always makes me instantly old.
it's kind of like freshmen this year have never known a life without the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding me. Really?
Mhm.
You don't know what a floppy disk is. It's like,
What?
for how much of my life?
We have an intern that works in our office part time, and she's like, I think she's barely 20, and she walked in and she was like, "Oh, this cold, it makes me feel so old."
Oh.
And everybody in the office said, "Go home, go. No, we cannot have this today. You can't have a 20-year-old complaining about how old she feels."
Well, can you imagine how those 20-year-olds are going to feel in 25, 30 years when that freshman list comes out and they're what are they going to be reminiscing about that they've taken for granted today that 30 years from now is going to be outdated?
Yeah, who knows?
The karma train's coming in
Yeah.
a few decades.
What do you mean they don't know Snapchat? What do you mean they don't know?
Yeah.
There you go, Instagram. Well, let's segue into our first break, and then we'll come back. So I don't know if I'm supposed to roll this for the next minute or two, or what Jeff's going to do, but
I'll let him edit it.
he'll figure out how to edit that.
Talk about something or
Oh, what's that?
this is where Jeff would talk about the
This is where Jeff
SGPN
says his
giving
stuff.
campaign.
Yeah, well, Jeff, guess what, dear? You get to put that in.
This could be like when who was it? Paul Harvey was still on the air, but he would have someone guest host, and then they would fill in a Paul Harvey commercial.
Right.
It'll be like that.
Yeah, okay. Well, do. I would even play my delightful little saxophone. All right, well let's just pick up. All right. Thanks for listening to Jeff's great commercial, y'all, because I certainly stopped that that event.
Want to talk about some of the things in the news?
Yeah, let's talk about some things that are happening.
All right, here's
what's going
something
on?
caught my eye. Did you hear that the Vatican is going to install showers in some of the public restrooms around St. Peter's in Rome?
Yeah, that Pope. When is he always taking care of the poor?
I think it was pretty
This guy, Francis.
I think it's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Don't you?
No, it's fantastic. I think that's one of the things we don't do a very good job at is how do we handle the poor, and it's something we struggle with here even in Malta, Montana, a little town along U.S. Highway 2. How do we handle the poor? We've been discussing it here, especially with the cold weather and people coming through, and how do we handle that in a way that's respectful of them? We don't. It's I hate that when I hit a point where I draw a blank. It was just be respectful of them, to give them what they need.
Right. I took a tour of our Catholic Charities here in Tulsa about a year ago, and the first thing they did is they sat us all down and said, "All right, we want to talk about why we do the things we do and how we do the things they do." And they said the number one thing is we want to interact with each person, no matter who they are, with the dignity of being made in the image and likeness of God. So they said, a lot of people come here because they want charity, they want food, they want clothes or whatever. But we sit down and talk with each person and say, okay, yeah, we can do those things for you, but we want to know how you got into the situation that you're in, that you need these things, and what can we do to help that.
Mhm.
so that it's never just a handout. It's always a conversation about what else can we do to help you alleviate the situation you're in. And I kind of I see these things with the showers as the kind of the same thing, in that they're speaking to the dignity of the person and
Hmm.
trying to reach out to them to make them have a better image of themselves.
No,
I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely. Did you ever see that there was a YouTube video that was out a couple of years ago where they took a homeless man and they brought him in and they addressed his physical needs, all of his physical needs. So they went in and I think that he had an opportunity to bathe and to wear some new clean clothes, and they
mhm,
gave him a haircut and some other grooming things that they did for him, and he immediately felt much better. But the way he looked was amazing.
Hmm.
mhm,
And not because he had a makeover, because he didn't. He was just given this opportunity to tend to what his personal needs were,
Right, right.
in a very um, I don't think it was sterile. I think that they were trying to really help the whole person, as opposed
Hmm.
to putting a band-aid on a situation like, okay, you're hungry, I'm going to give you a sandwich. That's not gonna solve anything. Um,
To be fair, there are those who they're homeless because they choose to be. They
yes, there's
honestly
there's
want
that
to.
element, but there are people who they just
But
come.
most people, I can't say most. I don't have quite the experience to judge that. But there are those who are homeless because they have lost their house, they have lost their
Right.
job, they've lost their vehicle, they've lost everything they have, but what they've got, the clothes on their back and maybe a little
Hmm.
bit in a bag,
Hmm.
and that's their entire life. And those especially are the people we need to be reaching out to and saying, we want to help you get a better life. We want to help you find a place to live. We want to help you find another job or get the resources you need to get back on your feet. And those who do choose to live out on the streets, that we still treat them with the respect and the love, give them the help that they
Hmm.
need to live a good life. It's not to say that they have to be productive members of society. I always cringe whenever I hear people say that, but still treat them with the respect and the dignity they deserve as human beings, as creatures made in the image and likeness of God.
Well, when we talk about pro-life, we're always thinking about anti-abortion,
Hmm.
but pro-life is at every stage of a person's life. Um,
Absolutely.
not
I
just
think
and
one of the
not just end of life issues. It's in between is where we
yeah,
really need to address a lot of the human dignity issues.
and that's,
yeah,
in my opinion, that's one of the sad things here in the church today, is because of political ideology, we have developed such a split between so-called pro-lifers and social justice people.
Hmm.
When, first of all, pro-life is social justice.
Hmm.
When you're talking anti-abortion, what most people think of pro-life, that is a social justice issue. So is anti-euthanasia, but also serving the preaching out to those in need, uh, you know, filling the corporal and spiritual works of mercy is pro-life, is social justice.
Hmm.
And I mean, I know that people, not everybody can do everything. No one can spend, an hour a week at the abortion clinic praying and going and spending an hour a week at the food bank and an hour a week feeding at the soup kitchen and an hour a week doing this. Not everybody has the time to do that, and we have to specialize. But we still have to make sure that we are taking care of everyone the best that we can, helping. And
mhm,
if that means we give money to a food bank instead of going and serve there, well, at least we're doing something to help that.
hmm. Did
That's
you hear
true.
about the story that's kind of related to that in Fort Lauderdale?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
so what I'm referring to is that there was a 90-year-old man and a couple of ministers that were arrested for feeding the homeless, because Fort Lauderdale has recently passed an ordinance outlawing a lot of organizations from passing out food on the street.
Mhm.
And I was just reviewing it, as you were speaking, and I can't figure out the reasoning, what their rationale is for passing this ordinance, other than they don't want to attract homeless people to Fort Lauderdale. But there are people already there that are
Mhm.
starving.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
insanity.
it's insane.
As I read it, I don't. It didn't sound like it was so much. I mean, part of it is not attracting because Fort Lauderdale is a place that's much more temperate, so that those who are traveling and willing to go places would go down there because then they could spend year round basically outside.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it, but I don't think that's the whole story. Um, as I was been reading stories on it, it does sound like there are other food banks. I think their concern is doing this in a public area where other people might be around and the increased risk of violence and so on. Whether it's rightly or wrongly, unfortunately, those who are homeless are viewed as increasing crime and so on.
Mm.
And again, I don't have enough experience to say whether or not that's the case, because I mean, I know you do have people who are mentally ill who are homeless, and they can potentially be violent. Again, this is potential. It's not to say that every single homeless person who's mentally ill will be violent, but it can happen, and I think that's the fear. I think there's also an image. Again, they're doing it at places like city parks, where the city would rather have families and the stereotypical American image of a park, and have feeding homeless there. It does not fit that image.
Right. I mean, there's some rationale. I mean, to what you're saying, but it seems to me there needs to be a middle ground.
Hmm.
You know, some compromise that allows the homeless to be fed and not to arrest people who are trying to do charitable work. I mean,
Well,
there ought to be
why
some
don't
middle ground there.
why don't we compromise on that for a few minutes and come back and wrap that up when we return from this break? Well, I have too
Jeff's
much
gonna love
stress with
this.
this timer. Jeff is indeed gonna like this. I can't even handle how he does this.
I was gonna say, I mean, that was a segue worthy of Jeff.
Yeah, you think so? You guys are too funny. I don't know
So
how he's
Jeff,
gonna
when you
handle
watch
it.
this, I'll understand if you never want any
If
of
you
us to
never
leave
want to
this
leave,
again.
yeah. This is this is this is Let's Humble Maria this week, and let's see if I learn my lesson and I continue to tease him when we return. All right.
So, in the off chance that Jeff does not insert commercials, please do support SQPN.
He's gonna insert them, but yes, thank you, Father. We are in the middle of our giving campaign, and we're gonna need Jeff to do that right. Okay, so we're gonna enter uh, our next piece. I can't get that. I can't get this to do this right. All right, let me set this. All right, all right, all right. So we're back, and who's gonna get the last word on feeding the homeless?
Well, I was just thinking about this. Kind of an irony is, and it really is a great irony, or maybe rather appropriate for me to listen to what we're talking about. Just before I came on the air here, recorded Tech to the Weekend with Father Roderick, and then would just get ready and jump over here. Well, someone came to the door, and it was a parishioner who was in the church. We leave, living in a small town, we can actually leave our church open 24/7. We don't have to worry about usually people breaking in or anything like that. Well, it sounds like because of the bitter cold, we've got a couple of gentlemen who potentially decided that our church was a good warm place to spend the night. And of course, we struggle with that, how to properly handle that, because we really can't allow them to do that. We're not equipped for people to stay overnight, except for certain circumstances like retreats where where there's chaperones and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we handle
liability issues?
Yeah, liability issues, and even if these gentlemen come in and they go downstairs and they sleep in the basement and they don't do any damage, we still can't allow that, because what happens if there is an emergency? We don't have the equipment for people staying overnight to be able to evacuate, and they don't know the facilities and so on. So struggle with how do we handle that? Do we allow them to stay there knowing that we could get in trouble? Our insurance company would throw a fit. Do we throw them out because they're not supposed to be there? Do we, yesterday we had a gentleman stop by, and for all I know, it's one of them that's over there. And I said, you can't stay here, but you can go inside the church and warm up for a few minutes, because it is so cold, and he's been walking. But then you got to go. We work, our ministerial association works through the sheriff's office to distribute vouchers for motel rooms and what have you, so that they can at least have one night in a warm place. Mm-hmm. But it is a challenge that we all have to struggle with, because how do we balance the needs of the parish, the needs of the requirements that are put on the parish, and their needs and their requirements? And that's a tough question for us as Christians.
Hmm.
It is, and then you can end up with some really bad press that makes it
Hmm.
go up and look very different from what.
And there is the concern of people who are transient, and that's more what we face. We don't face a lot of homeless people. We face people who are, they have a home somewhere else and they're passing through,
Hmm.
and maybe they're passing through and basically trying to get through on other people's generosity. Um, but how do you handle that in a way that's respectful to them, but doesn't put people at risk? Because
Hmm.
these are unknown people. They could be just to be violent. We don't know.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I ran into the same thing when I was campus minister, and we had a 24-hour chapel that occasionally some people would sleep in, and basically what I was told to do was to encourage them to use some of the social services that were in the area and get them
Mhm.
to move off our property and things like that. But if I was in an area where those things didn't exist, then I'd want to do more than that, and then like you say, where's that line between what's appropriate and what's not, and what's you know, it's a tough question. It's a very tough question.
Mhm. And we always need to remember that they are human beings made in the image and likeness of God, and to be respectful of that. At the same time, not saying, well, let them take whatever they want. That's
Hmm.
their ego, because
Yeah,
the thing that
there's another side to that. Yeah.
we have to serve others, and yeah, you can give them money, you can give them places to stay and whatever, but at some point, maybe that money might run out, and there might be people who are truly in need who can't be served because we don't have the money. And so that's always a hard question.
Right. Yeah.
Well, in a related in a related theme, did you see the article about the top 10 ways that churches drive away first-time guests? So the
Yes.
people who come, people who
Yeah.
are coming to, I've probably said this before, but I've never been more insulted in my life than the day that I got thrown out of the church in Monte Carlo
Hmm.
because I wanted to go to mass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was traveling, and I did the whole. I studied abroad. I studied in Aix-en-Provence in France, and it was a really close to the French Riviera, so really close to excellent train service that had me really backpacking through Europe when I was studying over there. So I did the whole stick a couple of changes of underwear and a new T-shirt into a backpack and take off, for a long weekend. So I've been thrown out of better places, but but I mean I witnessed a lot of people that were not allowed to enter some churches because they were in shorts, and
Hmm.
when we were traveling in the summer, especially, if you weren't dressed appropriate, you couldn't get in to see some of the churches. So we quickly learned that if we were traveling in shorts, to put in some sweatpants, and maybe a blouse that had some sleeves so that we could enter into the churches. So I dressed up to go to St. Peter's, and I dressed up to go to the Basilica in Florence, and even the baptistry in Pisa um, was my first experience, and I wasn't allowed in there because I was in shorts. But in France, it was actually a Sunday morning, and I was actually wearing a dress, and I wanted to go to mass. They turned me away. They said, "No, there's a mass going on," and I go, "Yes, that's the idea," and I'm here to worship along with the other people here. Nope, come back after mass. Oh, I was so incensed. So
Well,
anyway,
well.
isn't that
We had a
crazy?
similar situation in Paris. Because I was with a group of students and we had our priest with us, and we tried to go to mass at Notre Dame in Paris. But they wanted us to get in line and buy a ticket to get into the church.
Mm.
And
Oh,
but our priest knew. I mean, he'd been there before, and he said, well, there's mass going on in the side chapel. and we just want to go in there and go to mass. And they didn't believe us. They thought we were going to go into the side chapel and then get into the main church from there.
Hmm.
And
Oh,
it's like, and we're like, we're with our priest. He's right here, and we're going to go to mass. And it took us about 10 minutes to convince them that we weren't trying to scam them and
Right.
get into the church for free. And it's like, what do you mean you want to go to mass? This is a church. This is a museum. It's a church. You
Yeah,
want to go to
exactly.
mass?
I'm here to visit Jesus. Can I please get in?
It was weird. It was,
That's nutty.
yeah.
Oh, well, this was 20. Gosh, this was 31 years ago when I got thrown out of that church, and I'm
Hmm.
still bitter about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I understand their concerns. I don't agree with that. If there's mass going on, they should never say you can't be here. Now, if someone goes in and starts taking pictures, yes, you should have ushers who kind of say,
Not
come
now.
back in an hour. But if someone approaches an usher and says, I'm coming for mass, at that point, their only response should be to step back and say, welcome. I mean,
Hmm.
period. If someone says they're coming to mass, and I mean, there's concerns within church law, but that's a charity issue. This
Yeah.
goes back. We talked about how treating homeless as charity. Well, same thing in these situations. Yeah, you might be a tourist, but tourists still have to go to mass.
That's right.
And by the way, that's a hint. You're on vacation. Your
You
Sunday
still,
obligation still applies.
you
I
still
know
go
some
to.
priests have said otherwise. I'm telling you they're wrong.
Well, now let me ask you this question though, because this happened. Actually happened to us on vacation. We had checked the church time. We had checked the church times, and we all actually got up and physically went
Mm-hmm.
to mass, and we had crossed time zones, so we missed
Oh.
the mass. So
Hmm.
Well, you made the effort. I mean, at least as I always tell people, the obligation is there, but God doesn't expect you to do the impossible.
yeah,
You made the effort. Yeah, you missed the fact that it was the wrong time zone. It's not like God's going to say, well, guess what?
shame on you.
Yeah.
Because your time zone mistake, you're going to, down there. No, I don't
That
think God
counts
can.
more as an oops than an actual sin, I hope.
Exactly. Now, if you said, oh, gee, it's at 10 o'clock Central Time, but hey, we're on Mountain Time, so
So
we'll
we're
go at
not
10
gonna go.
o'clock Mountain Time. That
Yeah.
works, right? No.
No credit for that. So this article is kind of funny. I mean, it's not certainly not scientific. I think it was a Twitter poll that
Hmm.
Yeah.
that somebody took, and they just asked the question, and these are the responses that people gave. And I got to tell you, number one irritates me. It's having us stand up and greet one another in the worship service.
I hate
So
that.
yeah, like right at the I remember that there was a time in the middle of the homily, and please introduce all the guests that are with you. And so all these parishioners are standing up and saying, and this is my sister, and she's here from Minneapolis, and blah 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 blah.
What I hate that one personally, and this goes back long before I was ever a priest, long before I was a seminarian. I went and visited. I think I was on vacation or traveling or something, and ended up in a parish in a small town. And the priest did
That's
that.
another podcast. Oh, I'm sorry, Kath.
Yeah, there you go. Not parish, but I was in this little town or this little parish, and just kind of in the back and kind of hid. And the priest walked down the aisle before mass, before the opening hymn, before the procession, anything like that. And I know we've got visitors. Let's have them all stand up and introduce themselves and say where they're from. And I'm just like, don't notice me, don't notice me. And of course, he's going out and he's pointing at like two or three other people and points right at me. Oh, you're new. Why
Oh,
don't you introduce yourself?
That's
I decided at that
the
point I
lousy.
would never. It's so embarrassing. I mean, I'm here to worship our Lord, to receive Him in Holy Communion, fulfill my obligation. Yes, I'm not here to be a part of this community. I'm sorry. I mean, it's important to have a community, but I'm just passing through. So I agree that is probably the worst, and I want to forward that to every priest I know who does stuff like this. I want to
Don't
forward this and say, knock it off.
stop putting people on the spot. Well, not to mention it shouldn't really be happening in the middle of mass either. That's not the
even
time
and
for
I
it.
understand, and believe me, looking at this list, there is a need to be friendly. because the second item is unfriendly church members.
Mm-hmm.
And there very much is the need for that. And that's something I've been trying to convince people here, that we are going to get people if we are open and welcoming and friendly. And it was, you look at a lot of parishes that you enter into the church and people are having their little conversations. Got all the extraordinary ministers and electors, and they're all talking about what's going on around town and all the family issues and all that. And someone walks in, and they kind of look at them and keep talking, if they even look at them. And that's important. That's very important. When someone walks in the door, we should at least be saying, good morning, welcome, glad you're here, something like that. Just something. It doesn't have to be much, but let's not embarrass them in front of the entire congregation.
All right. Well, Don Benelli wrote a reflection on that this week on his blog. Actually, it's also one of the other items on the list, a bad church website.
Oh yes.
And he was talking about things that just don't make the church very welcoming to people, and I guess that's one of them. But my favorite on this list is members telling guests that they were in their seat or pew. Can you imagine that? Excuse me, you're sitting in my seat.
Oh.
What?
I'm going to embarrass a good friend of mine who's sick here in this parish. She's sick right now. I don't know if she's watching or not. I hope she is, because then I can embarrass her. But she talks about how one day her and a couple others went and sat in someone else's pew, and they knew they were sitting in someone else's pew. The dirty looks they got when this person actually had to sit one pew away from the
Kidding
pew.
me? That is so ridiculous.
Oh,
That is so
it's just hilarious. Because I've traveled around a lot, we moved a lot when I was a kid. We never really had our pew, so I've never understood this. This is my pew. I have sat here since Jesus was an infant. Why are you sitting in it?
I don't get it.
I know all about this.
You know all about this?
Oh, my aunt. I used to take my aunt to mass every Saturday evening, and she had her seat in the very back pew on the far left. And mass was at 5:30, and they got to the point we were going at 4:30, so she could beat this other old lady that tried to sit in her seat. And there was this passive aggressive thing where it's like, I have to get there before Mrs. So and so. And I was like, really? Come on, and she's just like, nope, that's my seat, and she wants it.
This would be like when Jeff would want to gain control of the show again and say, time for another break, but we'll be back in a moment.
Excellent segue.
Excellent segue. Ridiculous.
Sorry, I bugged out there for a minute.
Well, that's all right. I didn't even know.
To do its thing.
Decided to do its thing.
Oh, okay, great. You didn't miss me. Yeah.
All right. I didn't even notice. Let me see
Jeff
what I can do
he's
now
going to
to
shake his
focus.
head when he listens to this.
He's going to just say, Maria, you're just sad. Okay, this one. Oh, this one is only 13 minutes. Let's see how we can do with this one. All right, let's go. Well, we're back, folks, and I'm going to finish this off with one little tiny story because you know what? I get to run the show. Ha, 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 ha. My favorite seat-taking episode happened when I worked in the church, and maybe Father, you can address this, or Steve, I guess with your campus ministry experience too. We used to have weekly staff meetings, and the pastor would sit at the front of the conference table, and then everybody else had their own seat. And people didn't sit according to a particular hierarchy. It's just everybody had their own seat. And we had an associate who used to switch seats. And he would he would sit in the deacon's seat or he would sit in the DRE seat and then just watch. And I used to think, Father, do you have to go to confession for that? Because you're getting too much glee out of this whole experience.
See, I would do that. I would do that.
You would mix it up and mess people up.
I do that now.
We have messed up our audience by not having Jeff here today, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it to me is like, I try to be aware of the habits that I get into, and how it
Hmm.
kind of starts to limit your ability or your perception of things. So if I feel like I'm always sitting in the same seat, then I'll just sit in another one just for the heck of it, just
Just
to kind of change things up. I'm not doing it. I'm doing it for myself in a way. I'm not trying to like
Mhm.
gig somebody, and make them sit somewhere else. But
Well, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, this idea of having your seat is kind of spiritually troubling. This idea that you always sit in the same place, and not because it's your habit, but are you making your spiritual life the same way? You're only doing things a certain way. You're only doing things the way you've always done it. Are you willing to sit in another place knowing there in a larger parish there are going to be people you don't know sitting next to you, sitting around you? Or do you sit in the same place because you and Mrs. So and so and Mr. So and so have always sat next to each other, and there's a family you've watched growing up. Well, kids have been gone for 20 years, but they're still sitting in the same area. It's Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone spiritually? Not just physically by where you sit, but spiritually.
used
I
to
think that.
hijack the best part of the conversation now when we have to do the picks of the week.
Uh-oh.
Where
oh,
would you where would you sit? My pick of the week is the back pew, left side.
I
I
always.
tend well, I'm tall, so I always tend to sit in the back because I'm self-conscious about blocking people,
Mhm.
and so I don't know. I've just always kind of sat in the back, not
I
necessarily the back row, but near the back.
Of course, I've got the reserve seat.
I knew you were going to say that. You're
I
front and center, right?
Yep, exactly. Well, not center off to the side, but in the front.
Off to the side.
Um, no, but when I would attend mass, I would always end up, and it was never anything conscious, but I would always end up towards the front. First of all, if you're a visitor at church, there's always seats in the front.
Yeah,
This
and
is
for the
true.
latecomers.
Yeah,
And for the like,
exactly.
come, there's seats. Yeah, I hate it when it's the priest that says, "You, right
Move
here."
up.
Move up.
Right.
But I'd
There's
always
no need
sit
to
kind
stand
of
in the
like
back. Walk up front in front
yeah,
of everybody.
exactly.
Uh,
But I would sit about the fourth or fifth row on the right, and it would always end up being there. And I don't know, it was just kind of that was the point where I ended up at. It wasn't all the way at the front, but it was pretty close.
Mm.
Um,
I don't know. I like to sit where I sit in a classroom, and it seems to be always on the left side. Now, obviously, we sit in the back row now because it's a long walk from the parking lot, and John plops himself down in the first pew he can find. But
sure.
Mhm.
um, I prefer just a little bit further up, but not quite at the halfway point. But I like it because it gives me a broader view of of everything. But sometimes it also gives me a broader view of all the distractions at the same time.
Mm. Say, Father, I need you to counsel me on something. It's
Okay.
related to this. So, when I go to mass, and where I tend to sit is next to this man who irritates me immensely Bec- because he's okay. He's one of those people. He recites the prayers very loudly
Okay.
and slower than everybody else. So he finishes after everybody else does, and so I'm sitting there, and it's like I want to get up and move, but then it's like, am I being rude and uncharitable because I'm allowing this man to irritate me? And so I have this spiritual battle in my head, and it's like I don't want to be that guy that's like I'm trying to avoid him because I don't, am I making myself clear? I'm having this battle about what I should do about this.
Yeah, you're a jerk. Why don't you just sit in another pew?
I know, but then the intent. No, it's not that. It's not that I'm resisting that, but it's the intent is like I don't want to shun this guy. I don't want him to be the guy that ends up sitting on the back pew all by himself because everybody else has moved away from him. You know?
Have you
Uh,
ever read Saint Therese of Lisieux's Story of a Soul?
Are you talking about the sister that she had to help?
Yeah, she
That,
kept clicking her teeth and making all kinds of noise and irritated
yes,
the heck out of her.
yes. I knew you were gonna go there.
Uh, I would.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Effectively, he's saying, "Suck it up, cupcake."
Yeah.
Well, that's what I've been doing.
If nothing else, join in just as loudly at his pace. Oh,
Oh, oh, oh.
no, no, no.
It's like
Pray for him. There you go.
Listeners, send in your questions to Father Corey at Catholic Weekend at sqpn.com.
I haven't been accused of being the most pastoral priest, as you can tell.
Suck it up, cupcake.
Well, I think we need to be challenged sometimes.
Yeah. Believe me, it's hard. We've got a couple of gentlemen here. We got one gentleman in particular who is quite loud and hasn't quite figured out the new prayers. The new translation. 3 years on, we just let him be.
He just goes on his own.
Yep. He kind of notices when everybody else quits because it is right and just is a lot shorter than it is right to give you thanks and praise, and he just kind of trails off and does it the next.
And also with you.
Yeah.
And also with your spirit.
Yep.
I did that about a week or so ago. I guess my mind was wandering, and I was always like, where did that come from? I was so embarrassed. I was like, I wonder if anybody else heard that.
You get into your auto pilot. Well, I think that we really just got beyond, but I liked our conversation. So there's going to be no picks of the week. You guys don't have any anyway, do you?
Not really.
I sure don't. I sure don't.
Maybe we'll do a quick pick of the week. Just advertise Tech to the Future, the new podcast that Father Roderick's doing. I was able, before we recorded here, Catholic Weekend, I was recording the latest episode of Tech to the Future with Father Roderick. So if you're geeky bent or you have geek questions, you can listen to that podcast.
Awesome.
I have to say that is the perfect name for that show. That is like the geekiest name.
Why do you think Father Roderick chose it?
I know. I mean, it was like, that is awesome, and it's so nerdy. Perfect.
Does it have really bad science fiction music?
Oh, yeah. It's got. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's actually more kind of rockin' music. So.
That's hilarious. Well, Steve, do you have anything?
Only that the Feast of Christ the King is coming up, and that means the end of the liturgical year, which means Advent is coming.
Happy New Year!
That's my pick of the week. Feast of Christ the King. Go to Mass, especially go to Mass that Sunday.
Go to confession first. That's always a good thing too. Yep. So I guess let's wrap up the Good Diva's new book, The Grace of Yes. She's having her Grace of Yes Day on Tuesday, November 18th. So take a picture of yourself holding a sign that says...
Download them from the website.
You can download them from... Go to CatholicMom.com and chase all the proper links to that. And tell us what you say yes to. She wants to hear it. So hashtag... What is it? Grace of Yes Day?
Yep. I think it is Grace of Yes Day.
Grace of Yes Day, November 18th.
I just got my copy, and I'm getting ready to start reading it today.
Woo! There's a whole chapter about you, Dad.
Not me.
There is.
No.
All right, so where can we find you? Father? Where are you hanging out in those cyber spheres?
Well, you can find me on Google, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of fun stuff at Fr Koristika, last name spelled Sticha. You can find my homilies at frcorey.org. And you can find me occasionally on Tech to the Future. Secrets of Doctor Who is on hiatus for a little while until the Christmas episode comes out, and occasionally on the Sports Fathers with Father Darrell.
Hey, tell us. I'm just curious about your homilies because I've never checked that out. Is it just is it really just your homily that we can download?
It is. I use my little Android tablet to give my homilies, the outlines on that, and I just hit record as I'm giving my homily.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Do you actually write it all out, or do you just give yourself points and you
I use outline. I find if I write it out, then I sound like I'm reading it, and it just
Yeah.
doesn't sound natural, you know.
Those are the
Right.
best.
Yeah.
Those are the
Yeah. It's
best.
got
My pastor has a sticky note in his Magnificat. That's
and
what
that's
he
what he
walks
speaks.
around. Yeah. And they're great. They're some of the best homilies I've ever heard. But it's just all on one little yellow sticky note that he has
Sure,
stuffed into, so he can refer to to the scripture
that's
while
a
he's
good
walking
idea.
around.
That's a good one.
Just
Well, where can we find you, Steve?
everything is Stavon.com. And if you find me there, you're lucky. Now I've hit this. It seems like every year or so I hit this void, and it's like, what am I supposed to do with this blog now? I've kind of
Oh,
changed
really?
jobs, moved to a new place, and everything, and it's like, okay, I got to figure out what this is about again.
Ah,
Any ideas? Let me know.
working on it. Working on it. All right, so follow Steve. He's got some good tweets every once in a while too. And you can find me at Another Cup of Coffee, bageljohnson.com. I'm really not posting many items during the week, but I really have been enjoying the weekly photo challenge that the Daily Post at WordPress does. So I've got another picture up there from yesterday, and follow me on Twitter at Pago. And I'm on Facebook, but I don't really, whatever. Maria Johnson. Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for listening to another week of this train wreck. Make sure that you send lots of feedback to make sure that Jeff comes back next week and doesn't go flying off again. Thank you all, and God bless.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Ah, there we go. Nothing exploded. How about that, Jeff? I hate you.
No,
Uh,
you don't.
no, I don't. I love him. I love him. So,
Can
thanks,
you believe
guys.
there's another Dumb and Dumber movie coming out?
Can
Oh,
you
I
believe
saw
it?
that.
That's so dumb. It's just dumber. I don't know. Bah.
I've got a couple of friends, and it's their favorite movie because they were college roommates, and they were basically those two guys.
Oh
Oh my
boy.
goodness.
And they're just over the moon that there's another one coming out with the same two guys in it. So
That makes me so profoundly sad.
no.
Yeah.
Well, let me give a shout out to Mike. Thanks for taking the show notes today, Mike Kuipers.
Mike, Mike,
And
Mike,
Mike,
Mike.
Mike, Mike, Mike. And I'm gonna go because I'm gonna go play. Actually, I'm gonna go down to the monastery of the Holy Spirit with my friend. We're gonna go down there and take some pictures and probably sneak into the abbey and
Fun.
look at some pretty. Well, I'll be praying for you all. All right?
Please do.
Hopefully they won't
Yeah.
kick you out.
Oh, they won't. They won't. Bye, guys.